Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 368 for Monday, September 22nd, 2025. This is a podcast all about Minecraft, available across all major podcast platforms, including the video version that goes out on YouTube and Spotify. If you're enjoying the show, consider subscribing wherever you're listening to this. My name is Johnny, but the internet knows me as Pixel and joining me, as always, is on cassette, or perhaps on a more modern medium, Joel Duggan. Hi, Joel.
Hello, and if you'd like to hear a little bit about retro media, our experiences with music and what we listened to music on growing up, then you can check out the Render Distance. It's the extended version of the podcast. It's available at patreon.com/thespawnchunks to all of the people that support us there. You get extra stuff along with the extra footage and audio each week, because we now release the Render Distance on video format to our patrons exclusively. But you can also take part in things like the monthly Minecraft Hangout that's coming up this Saturday, where we talk with our patrons about what they've been doing in Minecraft over the last month. You get quarterly Hangouts where we talk about download numbers. A new one of those should be coming out soon because we're entering into the final quarter of the year. So we'll be recapping the third quarter. And of course, coming up this week, we also have Minecraft Live, where we'll be broadcasting that on Saturday and covering that. So all of that kind of stuff is very easy to track through patreon.com/thespawnchunks. If you are a free member, then you also get emails when new episodes come out, all that kind of stuff. So it's worth taking a look. Check it out, patreon.com/thespawnchunks.
This week, with Minecraft Live on the way, we thought it'd be fun to make a few predictions, so that's what our main discussion is going to be about, and I imagine there's a lot of people hanging on every word from Minecraft at this point. But in the meantime, of course, we'd like to do our quick login and chat about what we've been up to in our Minecraft lives. Now, when I saw you streaming over the weekend, Joel, I saw that you were exploring a massive Lush cave. I have to know more. Tell me everything.
It's huge. We measured it on stream because as technical as I am, I wanted to figure out where the center of it was, and it is over 150 blocks wide in both directions. It's sort of shaped like an L, so it's not exactly one giant chasm. There's kind of some different areas and nooks and crannies to it, but I kind of roughed out where the main chamber started and where the main chamber ended in both directions, and it was roughly 130 to 150 blocks. I found the exact center and then kind of thought I might ballpark this and move it over just so aesthetically it feels a little bit more like the middle. And so we've got that mapped out. And this is all underneath the massive mushroom island that I'm planning to build the sci-fi area on, which is huge. The island, I did measure the center of the island as well, and it's roughly 700 blocks by 700 blocks is the size of the mushroom island. So now the Lush Cave is not under the middle of it. I was really going to luck out if if the Lush Cave was also very central, and it's more northwest. It's kind of in the northwest quadrant. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to use the Lush Cave as a place to put a darkroom mob spawner, which I've never built a traditional get you everything mob spawner in there, and I want to see what I can do in this area to build those kinds of farms, because I'm going to be in the area a lot. The chunks are going to be loaded, and I'm hoping to get some resources and use it to kind of get some technical things on the way that's going to then inform and inspire the different kind of things I want to build. I think the idea is generally if I come up with something like a shulker box farm or a auto rocket farm or something, I'll then come up with some cool sci-fi build to make around that and be inspired by, and kind of house the farm inside of something. But you can't get mobs to spawn on a mushroom island. Unless, of course, now that in Caves and Cliffs, you have a biome underneath the island that does allow mob spawns. I can tell you right now, there are a lot of mobs spawning in this cave.
Oh, I bet.
I have been flying around. Thankfully, it's big enough to fly around in. So if you get overwhelmed, you can kind of take off. But I have been accosted by 3 skeletons, 2 zombies, a baby zombie, and 3 creepers at the same time. Because as I light this up, I'm narrowing the spawning spaces down lower and lower and lower, which is going to bode very well for putting a floating mob spawning platform in the middle of this thing, because of course we're going to get a lot of spawns up there. I might even put one up there temporarily to encourage mobs to spawn up there and not where I'm trying to light things up. I'm doing it in a unique way. I went to the frog light farm on the server and grabbed some frog lights. Matt Cast, who doesn't really play on the server anymore, also had a shop in the Dartmouth Meadows area where I went and bought some frog lights. It was 1 diamond per stack or something crazy. So I've been using the, is it the ochre frog lights, or the yellow ones?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
So I'm using those underneath in the Lush Cave because they work very well with the glowberries. And I think what I might do is I'm just kind of haphazardly spreading them around right now, but I might try to like make them into plants, like make them look like they're on the top of like a bamboo, or put them on drip leaf, or just have them look like some sort of weird alien plant life that's lighting up the cave. And so I've been starting to do that. And I've been trying to take some renderings. It's obviously difficult to see with the shaders on because you get the glow from the glow berries and then very little else. So I've been taking night vision potions, which I've never messed around with in Minecraft. So already I'm kind of adventuring into different aspects of the game that I don't usually partake in. And I mean, night vision really is a huge difference. I've included some screenshots that you can see that the size of the cave with the night vision on, and it's made the lighting of the cave a lot easier because I can see where the mobs are. I can see where of course, my existing frog lights have been placed, so I know where I need to place more. I also have the mini HUD mod installed, which at the press of a key, I can see the light level on the ground, and anything that's a 0 shows up as a red highlight, and anything above 0 is just green. So you don't even have to look at the number. You just look for the red squares and try to find places to drop a frog light. So that's been really fun. Getting that lit up and preparing that and exploring and getting some ideas. I found a spawner. There's a spider spawner, so not a cave spider spawner, but just a straight up spider spawner, which means I can potentially have the mob spawner set up with maybe bits of carpet every other block to prevent spiders from spawning in it, and then just use the spider spawner as something where I can get string from if I need to. We also have a data pack on the server that turns string into wool, so I can potentially get a wool farm out of that, although I would probably do like a sheep farm just for fun. So there's lots of ideas coming up. I'm starting to think about what I want to do in terms of having the central area be storage and try to like bring items towards the central area. I don't want to overdo it. Like I do like the idea of having some local storage near a farm, so it gives you a reason to go to those buildings over and over again. Like if you're just always hanging out in your storage room, it's kind of boring. So I don't know. I'm on the fence about whether I want to, like, say if I made like a mob spawning farm or a rocket farm or something like that, do I want to go to that mob farm all the time to get supplies, or do I want to have those supplies automatically sent to me? So I'm on the fence about how I'm going to do that. So at first it might be just practical to just not have them go anywhere, because there might not be anywhere for them to go, depending on what I build first. So I think it might be better to kind of explore my options, but it's been fun. It's been fun to explore the cave. I've had to put on diamond pants because I was just getting so close to death so often. Have not died yet, knock on wood. So hopefully that won't happen anytime soon. If I do, it's not a big deal. Like it's pretty easy to go back and get your stuff, because I mean the bed that I spawn in is just on the surface and I know how to get there. And I have yet to put a manual entrance into the cave. What I wanted to do with the center of the cave is find the center, and then on the surface basically create like a drop shaft, like a water elevator or something to go down into it. And what's nice about this is that if you go underneath the Lush cave, this goes all the way down to diamond level. Like I think we go down to Y -50 on average. There's little pockets that go down deeper, but I've not seen bedrock yet naturally. But when you go down deeper, it switches back to mushroom fields. So
Right.
the spawning area is just inside of the Lush cave. So I don't have to go light up caves and caves and caves outside of the Lush cave to get a decent spawning rate from the spawner that I'm going to build in it. So I'm really just hoping that enough light in this Lush cave will allow for some decent spawning. Also, I want to light up the Lush cave just because it's pretty to look at when you can see the bottom of it. So it'll be kind of, I want to do it in a way that this mob spawner is like a location to go. So I keep on thinking about like power cores or central cores or big rooms in sci-fi that have something in the middle that looks important and bright and colorful. So whatever I do with this mob spawner, it's probably going to look central and important, but I'm not going to surround it in tech. I think the tech is going to be like within this Lush cave. And so the Lush cave is going to be the scenery around it, and might also influence the color of it. Like maybe I'll make it kind of like green and yellow or something to kind of match everything. There's a lot of blue in the Lush cave too, because of all the little pockets of water.
You've got an ideal lush cave here, though. I mean, I think everybody wishes they could stumble upon something of this kind of scale. There's just this natural grandeur to the place, which I think is really, really cool to look at on its own. And yeah,
Hmm.
seeing pockets of deep slate in the walls, you've got like a transition between the two layers of the underground there, and like so scenic, so interesting. And I think even like the choices that you've made lighting it up, you could very easily imagine those being part of a natural cave like this. So you have an opportunity to keep the natural feel of it and be very deliberate about what you introduce that feels player made. And I really like the idea of having these little technological almost outposts in there while still maintaining the background of the lush cave as part of the environment. That's such a fun idea.
Thanks. Yeah, and I also kind of learned my lesson from West Hill in terms of like wanting to landscape and touch everything, and just realizing how much time that takes. And this is also something that's really large and would be difficult to remove and laborious to remove. So I don't want to do that. It's one of those things where I want to lean into like the natural way that Minecraft has presented this. I think the only things that I might remove are the stalactites, because some of them are kind of really silly and unattractive. Like they're only 1 block wide, so they, like it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like it doesn't look like it supports or feels like it supports anything. So that I'll probably just kind of fly up or pillar up, or to get a happy ghast down there and just kind of fly around and start doing things like that. As I want to maybe expand, the length of some of the glow berries, or add more glow berries where I want more light, that kind of thing. So it's going to be fun to mess around with, I think.
There's plenty of water down there that you can use to spawn some happy ghasts for sure. So you're kind of spoiled for choice in that regard. But yeah, super fun to have this big of a project area, and not to mention the mushroom fields over top of it. So yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting location for a general mob farm, especially considering how much of the environment is already pre-lit by the glowberries. You don't have to worry about all of those finicky cave pockets in the ceiling and stuff like that. I reckon you'll be onto a winner there.
So what have you been up to in Minecraft?
Well, speaking of mob farming, actually, this week in the Minecraft Survival Guide, I took the opportunity to get all of the music discs that I hadn't acquired so far. Obviously, in the Chase the Skies update, we got the Tears disc added, and then shortly thereafter, we got the Lava Chicken music disc. Lava Chicken remains the only one I don't have in terms of the overall collection of music discs, but I hadn't made a concerted effort to get hold of all the ones you can get from creepers being shot by skeletons, all of the sort of bonus Easter egg music discs that existed for a while in the game. So after getting hold of Tears and setting up a very basic record farm, one of the things where you sort of lure a skeleton into one spot, it gets trapped there, and then you just lure creepers into the other side and have them shot by the skeleton, just in terms of like the player trying to hide from the skeleton and the creeper sort of taking the hit for you. I decided to do what I had ultimately seen other folks do on servers. I think Zedaf and Rendog did this on a recent season of Hermitcraft, is create a creeper farm, which also incidentally produces spiders because I didn't want to make the design of the farm too complicated. It's just a flushing farm with trapdoors on the underside of each of the platforms to make sure that the height is low enough that you just get creepers and spiders. And it goes into a mob sorter, which is simply a pipe that has a 2 wide space with a 1.5 block clearance, so creepers can't get underneath that, but spiders can. And then the creepers get filtered out by the same water stream going into a different tunnel, which just has a 1 block wide but 2 blocks high space for the creepers to come out of. They all get filtered down into a glass box just so I can see how many of them are in there. And then I have 2 platforms set up where the player can stand on one side and a skeleton is on the other side in a minecart, because that was the easiest way to get the skeleton up to the platform. And they're firing arrows at the player, but through a column of lava. So regardless of whether or not the skeleton had an enchanted flame bow, it automatically sets the arrows on fire as they travel through the lava. The trick is to place TNT in the middle of this space, and it ideally needs to be in the middle just so it doesn't accidentally end up like glitching into the glass blocks on the side and blowing out the side of the tank. But that falls into a 3x3 of water, or waterlogged slabs in this case, that the creepers have already fallen into. And so I light a TNT using the skeleton, and the TNT drops the skeleton gets credit for killing all of the creepers, and it produces 15 records all at once. So I managed to get
Nice.
every music disc basically in one TNT blast on the most recent episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Super fun farm to build, really quite straightforward. I built the farm itself on a live stream and then just added the apparatus to sort the spiders and creepers after the fact. And it doesn't look super pretty, but this is in the sky near the Windy City. It's just sort of in the nearest available ocean to that area. And it's high up enough that obviously I don't get any spawns on the ground during the day. And at night it should even work pretty well. I found that when I added an expanded roof to this thing, just because light level 0 gets hit on the inside of the farm, I had a couple of tips from the community about this as well whilst I was building it on stream. Light level 0 means that pack spawning is promoted inside there as well. So even if I was running the farm at night, I was seeing maybe 3 or 4 creepers popping up total, and then if I had to get a certain distance away from the farm, they would start despawning because of the distance away I was. But then I can flush the farm a couple of times with this giant roof over it, and I get maybe 15 or 16 creepers all in the same box. The spiders just go to some campfires and they get farmed for string. But I think all in all, it turned into a really successful project. And happy ghasts, it turns out, are really helpful for building farms like this now, because you can get up underneath the farm. I built the platforms and stuff first with the water draining into a central 3x3, but then I could fly up underneath that to bolt on, effectively, the part of it that's the mob sorter, and the extra glass tank and everything off the side where the creepers go was all built from the back of a Happy Ghast as well. And then I could also use the Happy Ghast as a handy AFK platform that allows me to get to and from the area I need to stand so that mobs can effectively spawn in the farm, but then I can float down to the platform when I want to harvest the creepers for music discs. So all in all, this highlighted both how straightforward and fun it is to get the music discs this way, but also how useful Happy Ghasts are in building these sort of remote farms like this.
This is one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to doing a mob farm like this inside the Lush Cave, is that when I see these, I think they could potentially look cool. I can build something cool around them, until you realize you have to put such a large roof over them for those dark spaces. And you're like, how do you deal with such a large, flat, square area creatively?
Yeah.
And that's where I usually come up against, like maybe I don't want to do a floating in the sky mob farm. Like I'll take the lower rates from putting it like down below, but I might have a perfect situation in terms of like the lighting in the cave and the mushroom fields and stuff like that. But I'm curious, when you were looking up the different designs on how to do a darkroom mob spawner like this, is this still the most efficient way to do it? The diamond shaped pattern with the dispenser of water in the middle, like is that still viewed as like the most efficient?
I don't know if it's necessarily the most efficient. I think there's a lot of efficiency factors that are less to do with design and more to do with location. If you're able to put a farm at the lowest possible coordinates in the world with no blocks above it, similar to how you build an Enderman farm in the end, that's usually the most efficient in terms of rates, because the mob spawns will cycle so frequently. It's also the most labor intensive in the overworld because of the amount of area you have to light up spawn proof and also dig out now, considering that you have to get all the way down through deep slate layers. It's not easy to dig that stuff out. You're probably, throwing TNT at the problem by that point. But when it comes to efficiency of just like time management and building these farms, they're so quick to build. I remember the redstone part of it very easily because it's just dispensers, observers, and then a hopper clock at the top. And the diamond-shaped platforms are really just so water can flush to each edge of them without any gaps in the water streams, or without the, issue of the water flowing over the sides and some mobs being able to float back up or anything like that. Even in this farm, the spiders occasionally get stuck on the sides of blocks and start to climb back up to the platform, but the spiders also aren't the point of this farm, so I'm not really concerned with their behavior at that point. I think really these are just very straightforward to build. It's something I can do from memory instead of having to look up a design for it. And this was never really built with efficiency in mind, when the goal in the first place was just to get a handful of creepers, enough to supplement my record collection. So yeah, overall, I think these are still some of the best farms you can build, just because of the ease of understanding the mechanics. And that's really what I strive for in my world, is building something that I could also explain at short notice.
Yeah, I think I might try to do something slightly different to try and capitalize on space and think about how it might look in the end. I think it would be fun, instead of having the water dispensed in the middle, to have the water dispensed on the edges and go towards the middle. So instead of having your edge of the exterior platforms be where the mobs are sent off, have like basically like an X pit in the middle where there'd be more water dispensers. It'd be 4 dispensers, or 4 dispensers per floor instead of 1. So it's more labor intensive that way. But like I mean, I'm endgame. I've got the resources. That's not a big deal. So that could be kind of fun to flush the mobs towards the middle, have them fall down in the middle, and then again reducing the footprint that I'd have to decorate, and might have it be a slightly different look. Rather than having a big water catchment in the bottom, I could really just have like some sort of X-shaped pit that they all fall into, and funnel them down into something central and that kind of stuff. So that could be kind of fun. So I don't think I'm going to be separating the mobs. I think I'll probably separate the items. That's probably where I would go with it. And because of the crafter, like I also would, probably grab the things that are going to be able to be crafted into other things. Or like if I don't necessarily want bones, I'd rather turn them into bone meal than turn them into bone blocks or white dye or something like that. Could be fun to mess around with. I also have to think about all the different things I'm going to get in terms of like armor and bows and things that might come out that I'm not necessarily anticipating. So, but it's really cool. I like that you get farming the music discs. Like, it's not a common thing. You don't necessarily see a lot of farms for that. Usually you see creeper farms for gunpowder, for rockets, or TNT, of course, and spiders just being like a byproduct, I guess. But that's cool. And so I'm curious, because of the efficiency, it doesn't sound like you need a lot of TNT, so you're not stuck like farming endless sand to try and fuel this farm. Like, if you're getting 15 discs out of one TNT blast, like it seems like it's super efficient in terms of the labor intensive that usually comes along with TNT related farms.
Yeah, and I really don't need to use the farm all that often. Like, it was more a sense of showing people what was possible than it being a farm that was super necessary for my world long term.
Right.
But then
Yeah.
I always have the opportunity of retrofitting this into a farm that does just produce gunpowder. And I could, like, release the skeleton back into the wild and, have the farm sort of retrofitted to be more of a creeper farm. Find an alternate method of dealing with the spiders, like, carpet some areas and put cats in to flush the creepers off the platform instead. I've done designs like that in the past. So yeah, it was really just about, like, what can I do that will get me a ton of music discs really fast and be a bit spectacular. Like, it felt like a fun way to put a button on the project of getting hold of all of the music discs. Alas, chicken jockeys still evade me, but there is plenty of time for those to pop up when I'm exploring caves and whatnot. We should move on into the news, though, because we have a bunch of pre-releases to talk about and some breaking news. So Minecraft Java Edition 1.21.9 pre-release 1 was published last Tuesday, September 16th. It says, quote, today's release includes more Copper Golem improvements, some changes to Mannequins, and several bug fixes. Pre-releases don't follow the usual Tuesday release schedule, so keep an eye out for the next one. Changes in 1.21.9 pre-1 include Copper Golems now only trying to open chests on neighboring blocks when they're a passenger, for example, in a boat or a minecart, and notifications now use the Minecraft notification prefix instead of just notification. Some technical changes in 1.21.9 pre-1. Mannequin description text can now be configured, and mannequins now accept the Minecraft profile component from spawner items. The spawn point command now optionally takes in a pitch argument, as well as rotation of other kinds, and the set world spawn command is no longer limited to the overworld. This means players can, for example, respawn in the nether, even if they have no bed or respawn anchor. There are a few other changes to mannequins, commands, data components, and loot functions. If you want the full details, check out the changelog. We'll have it linked in this week's show notes. Notable bug fixes in 1.21.9 pre-1 include end portals not negating fall damage, lightning did not reset copper golem oxidation, copper golems pathfinding to chests incorrectly, copper golems no longer sorting items when in a minecart, and relative teleportation across dimensions being inconsistent. There are also a handful of other bug fixes. Once again, we'll refer you to the changelog if you want the full list. Java Edition 121.9 pre-release 2 was published on Friday, 19th of December. Changes in 121.9 pre-2 include copper golems now oxidizing even when the game rule do daylight cycle is disabled. The Copper Golem's behavior for turning into a statue has also been tweaked to match Bedrock Edition. Copper Golems no longer need to be close to the center of an empty block position in order to turn into a statue, and they now have the possibility to turn into a statue as soon as they become fully oxidized. Notable bug fixes in this pre-release: Copper Golems causing huge lag spikes when checking chests, posed mannequins not using the correct hitbox, dimension-specific world spawn points causing mob spawning in other dimensions to fail, and Copper Golems not getting close enough to search a chest, which means they got permanently stuck. Those have been fixed along with a handful of other bug fixes. For the full list of those, once again, check out the snapshot changelog at minecraft.net. That'll be linked in our show notes at thespawnchunks.com. The breaking news is, as we started recording this podcast, our chat let us know that pre-release 3 had just been put out. Unusual for releases to happen on a Monday, but as it said, they can happen any day of the week when we're in pre-releases. This just had 2 bug fixes for Copper Golems causing lag spikes when checking chests once again, and Copper Golem statues causing culling issues when placed above certain blocks. We'll have a link to that in our show notes as well, so check out thespawnchunks.com for more.
When it came to the changes to the Copper Golems, I mean, bug fixes aside, I thought it was interesting that they were changing the way that Copper Golems were behaving if they were a passenger in a boat or if they were in a minecart. They removed the ability for the Copper Golems to check chests if they were in a minecart, and then they have to be a passenger in a boat, not the main, I guess, mob in a boat in order to check chests. That was still a little bit confusing in terms of what I wanted to talk about, which I was surprised because I feel like one of the ways that you might want to make Copper Golems more efficient is to remove the time it takes them to walk to and search certain chests. So in my mind, even though I haven't tested this theory practically, would be to restrict the movement of a Copper Golem so that I can get items from a copper chest, but put them only in the chest that it can reach because it can't really go anywhere. And it feels like by removing this ability in boats and minecarts that the Copper Golem won't be able to be pinned in place as easily. You could still block it in, but that means that you have to then have Copper Golems like farther apart if you wanted to have several Copper Golems on several different chests sorting things. I don't know what the practical application of that is. It's one of those things that's just it's an odd restriction. My guess is that they were probably behaving weirdly, like they would probably find a chest or see a chest they couldn't reach from a boat or from a minecart and then just not sort at all. Might be my assumption, but it was worth noting, I think, that they've been nerfed in terms of their ability to do things from within a minecart or within a boat.
Yeah, see, I think this is a problem of the way changelogs present bug fixes, because it's actually a double negative. When the bug fix says Copper Golems no longer sort items when in minecarts, that was an issue a player reported with that title, and so it means that's been fixed. The changelog itself says Copper Golems now only try to open chests on neighboring blocks when they're a passenger in a boat or a minecart. So I presume that means that you can roll a Copper Golem up to a chest and it will only sort those chests instead of getting stuck trying to pathfind to other chests that it can see but can't reach because it can't move. So I think you can still do that. I think you should still be able to move the golems around using whatever means of propulsion, and they will just try to open chests that are reasonably within reach to them.
Okay. I really find the wording on the bug fixes odd then. Like it's not the clearest form of communication, which I've seen before from Mojang. Like that's such an odd way to present what a Copper Golem can and cannot do in terms of search and reach.
Yeah, I mean, it helps to just focus on what they said in the changelog rather than, like, the bug fixes are always going to be worded as, like, we've fixed this issue, and then they tell you what the issue was. So, like, you just kind of have to invert what you're reading in the changelog each time. But no worries. I think, honestly, like, golems are getting closer and closer to just being, like, as players expect them to be, and I think that's the most important thing. I'm personally glad that Copper Golem aging is being tweaked a little, considering that the statues themselves aren't craftable. This is something that I've not really run into because I haven't played Survival in the snapshots very much, but I think playing around with them in creative has been really fun because of the comparator signal readouts you can get from the different poses and stuff like that. I've already thought of a couple of fun, like, combination lock puzzles and stuff that you can do with them, or if you just want them to be decorative in nature. It takes a while to get them when you're in survival, or at least it did. I think at this point, since you can age the copper blocks before you make them into Copper Golems, you don't have to wait for the copper golem to age from a fresh copper golem all the way down into oxidized and then wait for it to turn into a statue. I think if you just create an oxidized copper golem and it will become a statue relatively quickly, I think that's a good thing, because then that gives players much more access to them in statue form earlier. So that's a really great change, I think. It's going to feel a little strange to have to, if you want to have a certain age of copper golem actually moving around, immediately have some honeycomb ready so that you can wax them. But yeah, I think the shortcut to oxidize the copper block first is going to make sure that players can play around with the statues as soon as they want to. If your ideal version of the copper golem is that it just stands still or sits in a corner and doesn't try to rifle through your chests and find stuff to sort, then I think that's kind of ideal.
What do you think about the potential release date for the Copper Age?
I mean, I think we're still on the money. I think pre-release is starting last week, and we have a pre-release this week with 2 bug fixes in it. Probably means we're thinking release candidates this week and a release next week, which would mean Tuesday, September 30th, basically right after Minecraft Live. And I think we'll get a release candidate probably mid-week, perhaps later this week, if they plan on maybe putting out a Monday release candidate 2 or something like that. I can see that happening, which then means, we'll be in the Copper Age before long, which is great. I think it's good timing, especially since, based on previous example, if they have something to announce at Minecraft Live that they're going to be putting out towards the early stages of December because of, school holidays for the Mojang team themselves, then that means we're going to get snapshots for that relatively quickly. So people will be in the Copper Age for a week or so, and then suddenly we'll have a bunch of new snapshot features to play around with for those of us who keep up with that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've got more to say about those kind of predictions and recapping from last year's Minecraft Live in our main discussion. But I agree. I don't really have anything to add in terms of the timeline. I think that's probably pretty apt in terms of the predictions for the Copper Age, which is good because I decided to not even bother to update to Chase the Skies on the Citadel. We haven't needed it yet. I could probably do with a Happy Ghast right now to explore that Lush Cave, but with the Copper Age being so close and the amount of time and effort that goes into updating the mods and stuff like that on the server, I think I'm just going to wait for the Copper Age to come out and just go straight to the Copper Age and have all the things that I need.
I think it's interesting that you're running into a problem we predicted fairly early about gameplay drops, though, is that people who rely on mods for servers and that kind of thing, even if it's smaller quality of life mods like you use on the Citadel, I think it is disincentivizing people to stay fully up to date with this stuff if they don't want to run a purely vanilla server. But it'll be interesting to see what are the key sort of points of pressure from these updates, the features people really want that do encourage them to make the switch and put all of that effort in. So if the Copper Age drop sounds like that point for you, then obviously folks can write in and let us know how you feel about the latest update cadence. We're always interested to hear from the community on that score. And that brings us neatly into chunk mail. As always, if you'd like to email the show, the email address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. Keep them short and sweet if you can. It really does help us include them in the show more easily. But Joel has got this first one this week.
This is from Fireworks. The subject is data-driven mannequin AI. Hi, Pix and Joel. I've been listening to this show since right before Chase the Skies, and it happened to be a great listen during my commute to work. It's nice to get weekly updates on Minecraft, as it's been a while since I've picked up the game. The new mannequin entity is really cool. I've seen some mods over the years implement similar, quote, NPCs, so it's nice to have them in the base game. One thing that came to mind about mannequins is that it would be cool to be able to specify behaviors for them that they can do rather than just stand around. I was thinking of being able to assign them pathfinding and behavior of other mobs, so they could chase the player like a zombie or wander around like a villager. I'd give life to these entities, or it would give life to these entities, and can open doors to adding life to creative builds filled with quote-unquote players running around. Interested to hear your thoughts. Fireworks suffocated to death by a swarm of mannequins. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah,
I know Halloween is 6 weeks away, but that's not how I want to go.
It's the subject of many a Doctor Who episode, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually the mannequins that are the problem. But aside from suffocating players to death by swarming them, I do see the point here. And I think I'm sort of surprised that Mannequins aren't doing more yet, but I will say now Mannequins are in the game, I imagine they will get more sophisticated over time. They're a relatively recent addition. They've only been added to this release fairly recently, and it's not even as a survival feature. So while it's not Mojang's primary focus, I mean, they focus on all aspects of the game. They're looking into what's good for creative players and map makers and stuff. So just like creating stuff like the Copper Golem and things that are available in the survival aspect of the game is not always going to be where all of the development happens. So I reckon there's probably more stuff to come from Mannequins, and this is just early stages, testing things out, deciding what players want from them, and then if there's player demand for them to be more sophisticated in future, I don't see the Mojang team backing down from that.
I see more sophistication. I think the name on its own probably indicates that we're not going to get a lot of motion out of them. I could see additional poses. Like right now, it's restricted to standing, crouching, swimming, fall/flying, and sleeping. None of which are really all that creative, we'll say, in terms of expressing yourself in Minecraft. Because I really feel like the Mannequins are sort of a Mojang answer to the very popular armor posing data packs or mods that are out there that people have seen on various YouTube videos, I'm sure, where you can pose an armor stand in Java and have it, wear armor and look like a player, although you can still see the armor stand in some cases. Or if you don't, then the armor sort of looks like it's floating, like there's no skin underneath it. It's just kind of there. It gave the ability to have arms on armor stands in Java, which was nice. But the data packs have their own kind of limitations. And I've used both. I've used a data pack from Vanilla Tweaks, and I've used the Armor Poser mod that is just a faster UI. It does the same thing. It just has the UI that comes with it that's a little bit easier to use. And I feel like this could be made more interesting, as you said, by adding more poses. I think that it's great that they are able to display items and armor. It's great that you can bring in skins from yourself or other players. I would imagine, though, that because of data packs, that's like having this tech in the game is I would anticipate where Mojang might leave it for quite some time. And then you'll see data packs potentially in mod authors pick up and say, oh, well, now we have access to this data. We have access to this thing. How can we make this so it's accessible in survival? What does a UI look like for it? What are the different poses we can pre-program into it? That kind of thing. I don't particularly think that having static mannequins around my builds is really going to add much life to them. I mean, I could see it as maybe like if you actually wanted to use it as a mannequin, like in a department store, or a statue that you wanted to put armor on or something in the middle of a square, sure. But if it's not moving around like a bee or a zombie or a villager, then it's probably not going to be of great interest to me. But with data packs and the idea of having custom skins available for players, you could get some custom textures in the game. So if you make a texture for your head, bring yourself into the game with that skin on, and then use the mannequin, with a data pack, you might be able to get like unique textures that are like mini blocks and things like that in the game. So they exist already through some data packs, but it could be made to be more specific, or perhaps even easier to accomplish. So one of the things I'd like to point out is, with the old mini blocks data pack, it was tied to the Wandering Trader. So it gave a use for the Wandering Trader. You'd have to have the block already. So if you wanted a mini block of coal, you'd have to have coal ore as a block on you to then trade with the Wandering Trader. But then they updated that data pack to be simply something that you put the block in the stonecutter, and one of the options that the stonecutter would give you, along with like stairs and slabs and other things, would be a mini block version of that block, basically like cutting that Minecraft block into 8 and giving you 8 of whatever that was, stone, andesite, etc. And so I could see something like that in a data pack where you can use the command to bring in the mannequin and then get access to that mannequin's head that you could use as other things. Like if you just made a pumpkin skin, then you could get a pumpkin mini block, or something that doesn't exist in the game. Like for me, I'm making a sci-fi build. Maybe I want something that looks like a little computer. Like that kind of stuff could be fun to mess around with.
Yeah, I think also if you give players a blank slate, like even if these mannequins don't get any more sophisticated, whether through data packs or through mods, players are going to find ways of augmenting that. Like if you just given them a shortcut to doing something that they had to inject more mod code in to do before, like create NPCs like this, then it just makes those people's job easier, provided that they can work with the parameters Mojang have given them. And so I expect if we don't hear anything more about Mannequins after this release, a better Mannequins mod is just around the corner from players who feel like they could do a lot more with that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, let's just hope they have a better name.
Yeah. I feel like animatronics doesn't even quite suit the Minecraft way of things, you know, so and maybe carries too many Five Nights at Freddy's connotations for people who get a little too scared about them. Either way, we're going to move on to our second email. This one comes in from Wake Gilliams with the subject, Back to the Sounds. G'day, Pix and Joel. In the most recent episode, Joel mentioned quality of life improvements to sound sliders. My question is, am I the only one that cares more specifically about how incredibly loud it is when you eat food in-game? It would be nice if we could turn sounds up or down on specific player actions. Let me know your thoughts. Wake Gilliams was killed by a warden when he went deaf from eating a potato and couldn't hear the shrieker. Potato deafness is a real problem. It does affect one, I guess, Australians, judging by the g'day at the beginning of the email. So hope your hearing comes back soon.
Yeah, if it's bigger than your pinky, don't stick it in your ear.
There's an entire potato just hanging out of somebody's ear. Absolutely a Minecraft thing. It would happen.
Potato earphones, right? Like I'm seeing the 3D printed, shells to go over, your headphones already.
Maybe it was a poisonous potato as well. Maybe that's what the problem was.
Potentially, yeah. That all of a sudden you're into like fungus growth and what's the video game that was turned into a TV show?
Or like The Last of Us, yeah.
Last of Us, thank you. Yeah. You get mushrooms growing out of your head, like, no thanks. That's not what I want in my Minecraft world. I was just thinking about this the other day, actually. I was I think it was just streaming, and I had come back from a break, and I was eating a golden carrot. And I was like, man, this is really quite loud. Because I try to do it before I return to being live, like at the end of my little break. I try to eat the food and get everything back up so I don't have to do it while I'm on screen and the sound is going out. But also, the Mushroom Island is really quiet. Like, it is devoid of life. There is nothing going on with the exception of the odd mushroom, which if you're far enough away, they're not everywhere. So like you can kind of have a very quiet space. And I would be coming up from the Lush cave, and of course, having dealt with some mobs, I would have to eat and heal and all that kind of stuff. And really found that things were loud. And then during my lighting up of the Lush cave, didn't want to eat while I was exploring and lighting up because my head had to be on a swivel, both visually and from an audio perspective, listening for creepers coming up, because you'd have to listen for creepers going over the clay or the drip leaf and making some very specific noises, because in a like very large, very overgrown lush cave, you can't see a creeper until it's on top of you, because a lot of times the grass and the various terrain height changes make, like, the creeper could only be 1 block tall because it could be 1 block below you because of all the different like height changes and stuff. So it became really difficult to spot them. So I had to listen for them first. And eating while you were down there, like I would fly around the cave and eat in the air, because if you ate, you couldn't hear anything else. And it's something that I agree would be a great quality of life change, specifically because while it's pretty digital and pretty non-offensive in Minecraft, except for the volume, there have been situations that I've come across in the past where in another game, Satisfactory, which I've mentioned a lot on the show, they've actually added, when they came out with their full release, at some point earlier, close to the full release, they added audio sliders for just about everything in the game that was like either a tool, a machine, your environment, a mob. Like you could turn spiders up and down. You could turn, not spiders, they're called something else, striders or something. But you could turn, the chainsaw was really loud. You could turn that down. But one of the things that they changed in 2 ways was the food consumption volume. If you ate something like a barrel nut or a bacon mushroom in Satisfactory, there is a very distinct munching noise, similar to, I think, a lot of other games, but it was just a little bit too, we'll say, articulate in Satisfactory, and people were kind of irked out by it. So not only did they give you a volume slider to turn it up or down, they also give you a sound toggle to turn it into a digital kind of like beep beep whenever you ate something. I did that immediately. The moment that I had a chance to turn that noise off, I did. Much to the celebration of my chat room, which was also in the range of people that were just like, this is really irritating whenever you have to eat something in the game to regain your health. Now, thankfully, in Satisfactory, you can regain health like automatically. You don't have to eat to do that. So I didn't, after the 1.0 release, I didn't have to do it as often, but it really can be a trigger for some people if the sound is not appealing or if the sound is too loud. I know that I have tried to change like block breaking noises in Minecraft to try and appease those. I have a resource pack that changes the grass block breaking noise to dirt block breaking noise, which also um, flags some people that are really familiar with Minecraft. They're like, when you break bushes and leaf blocks, Joel, why do they make a dirt noise? And it's like, oh, because Minecraft uses the same grass noise across several different blocks for breaking. And I've changed it to dirt because when I was clearing out all the grass in the modern city area and flattening that area out, I just got so irritated by the staticky noise of the grass breaking that I had to change it. Like it was a problem for me. And so having those abilities in the game from a volume standpoint, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree, including the Mojang team, because I'm sure pretty recently they changed a few sound effects in terms of their volume level. I think grass blocks all are slightly quieter by default now. It's because of the certain frequencies, like it gets higher up into like the treble range, and that stuff tends to sound a bit more kind of tinny and invasive to the ear. They also did a lot of tinkering with the sound of copper chests and copper golems recently. I think they've turned down the range at which some of those sounds are audible. They've done that for pistons recently as well. It was actually really funny going back to my copper aging facility and running a bunch of the flying machines in that and having to get really close before I could hear the flying machines moving, which was very different from when I designed it initially. But anyway, with regards to this email, I did a little bit of research. According to the Minecraft wiki, at least, the player's slider in the sound settings, which people don't usually touch all that much because it doesn't really change a great deal about the experience, does control eating noises up until you finish eating. For some reason, the sound effect for finishing eating is a friendly mob's sound, according to the Minecraft wiki. Again, this data may not be 100% accurate. It might have changed recently, but I wonder if maybe certain mobs' eating sounds use the same sound effect, and so it makes more sense to put it in that category. Regardless, in Bedrock Edition, the player's slider controls all sounds related to eating, but in both versions, it also controls sounds like player movement, the footsteps that you hear whilst you're walking around, the player shooting or throwing a projectile, like throwing a snowball or shooting an arrow from a bow, and also interactions with entities, which I presume means things like shearing sheep, maybe even the sound of your sword swinging when you go to attack a mob. I'm not certain exactly what all of that controls. Obviously, it doesn't control the sounds the mob make when it gets hit, but there might be some stuff that it's related to in that case. But that might be a solution depending on whether or not you think it's worth turning down the other sound effects. In which case, if you just want to get rid of the eating and drinking sounds, VanillaTweaks.net has a peace and quiet resource pack called Quieter Consumables, which, if you install that, it decreases eating and drinking sounds by 95%, which basically makes them virtually inaudible, especially if you've tweaked the player's sliders a little bit more from there. So, if you are somebody who struggles with that sort of misophonia, I guess, is the sort of the aversion to certain types of sounds, then maybe consider the Vanilla Tweaks resource packs, because they have a lot of those. They have one that makes nether portals quieter. They have a bunch of them for a bunch of different sounds that people have raised objections to over the years. So definitely recommend giving those a try for your own quality of life.
We've got quieter ghasts on the Citadel for sure. I don't know if we've got quieter nether portals. I don't use them often enough for it to be a real issue. Also, that might have been something that Mojang adjusted in recent memory, so that they may not. I may not need that on the server, but I'll have to look into the consumables, because I would probably run that. 95% seems like a weird, like, full decrease in volume. I'm surprised that there isn't like a slider, or like there isn't an option. I guess the same thing, quieter ghasts. Like, you can still hear them. I guess they're just not as shrill. I'm curious, because as you were speaking though, I mean, you've got a background in sound design. Is there anything in Minecraft that sticks out to you that edges on that, like, too much treble, it's on an irritating frequency? Like, is there anything in Minecraft where not necessarily like bugs you or like irks you, but something where you can say, this is something I could see being improved for maybe a broader majority of players enjoying it? Like, is there anything that sticks out to you?
See, for me, it's not necessarily individual sounds, it's the repetition of individual sounds. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that may still be one of the reasons why you can't insta-mine glass, although you get the same sound effect from ice breaking. When I've been harvesting like icebergs for packed ice and things like that, yeah, it feels like I've been just listening continuously to the sound of glass shattering, and that can get a little bit much. So it's
Mm-hmm.
times like that I go into the sound settings and I just turn the block slider down a whole
Right.
bunch. I do the same thing when I'm at my Enderman farm repairing my tools, because the sound of constantly hitting or killing Enderman over and over again gets repetitive. But it's not so much an issue with the individual sounds as it is an issue with we've created a situation in which you hear a lot of that sound in very quick succession, and that tends to feel a little bit overwhelming to me. But again, that's something that I sort of mitigate as and when. Like, I don't necessarily see it as a problem that Mojang themselves have to fix. It's more that I'm the one who's created a farm where I can kill 70 Endermen with a single swing of my sword, so I'm the one who has to deal with the noise by turning my mob sounds down to 1% or whatever, right?
I do that in my gold farm. Like when I AFK at the gold farm and I'm on stream, I'm popping in there for while I'm away on a break. Like the few seconds that I'm there before I leave, and the few seconds that I'm there when I come back, it would be really obnoxious to sit there as like dozens of angry zombified piglin come in and get hit and die and are constantly like having that weird growl squeal thing that they do.
Yeah.
And so I just quickly pop into the audio settings and I just take the volume for the whole game down to like 2% so
Yeah.
that it's not crazy. It's already ducked a little bit like in OBS, so people are not getting the full volume of the game on stream anyway. So when I take it down to 2%, it's basically only audible just enough so that people know what's going on. But I've done it where I've forgotten to turn it back up and I've flown away, and then one of my mods will remind me like, hey, we really can't hear the game at all, because
Yeah.
at that low level, like everything just, it feels like you're watching a silent movie, right? You can't really hear what's going on, especially if I'm talking at the same time, because then you can't hear even something like a rocket boost or something like that. But I'd be on board with more variety, like you talked about breaking blocks and glass and things like that. Something I'm not looking forward to in the sci-fi zone is the amount of glass I'm probably going to be using for effects and color and fun stuff like that. But if I have to change anything or break anything or move something, it's really tedious and annoying to break glass. And so it would be nice to have, and this could be something like a data pack I could maybe find, where there would be a variety of different breaking noises, and have it just like choose something at random so that it's not always the same. That would be nice.
I think even, yeah, just having a glass sound effect where you run a low pass filter on it so you aren't getting so many of those higher treble frequencies, I think could make a lot of difference to people who are sensitive to that kind of thing. Changing it up completely, though, for our main discussion, we're going to be talking about Minecraft Live September 2025, and we have to specify the month now because we get 2 of them per year. We are going to attempt to predict the unpredictable. Mojang have made a lot of interesting left turns in development lately. They've been talking about like adding in stuff like happy ghasts, which have been, an idea that's been percolating in the player base for a while. You've seen mods that do it, but actually bringing them to the vanilla game is something people never really expected. The same goes for the Copper Golem, kind of getting drawn out of the ideas bank, as they've referred to it in the past, and brought to the Copper Age drop. So we're going to look back a little bit at what previous Minecraft Lives have given us and see if there's any kind of pattern that we can use to predict what they're going to introduce for Minecraft Live September 2025, which is potentially going to give us the winter 2025 drop, and perhaps a look at some things beyond that.
I thought I'd look back at Minecraft Live 2024 from last year, which was on the 28th of September, which was a Saturday. It's roughly the same Saturday, but just as the calendar marches forward, the 28th this year is a Sunday. So the 27th is when it's going to happen this year. And that is at 10 a.m. Pacific. So it's going to be 2 p.m. for me, and I believe that's 6 p.m. for you?
Yeah, something like that. I believe it's 7 p.m. Central European time, so I just take an hour off of that, yeah.
Right. So with that, and at the 2024 Minecraft Live, they announced the Bundles of Bravery drop, and that was later released on October 22nd. Snapshots for that started immediately after the Minecraft Live on that following week. They also announced the winter drop, which is what they called it at the time. Later on, we found out that it was going to be called the Gardens Awakens. The first snapshot was actually October 2nd, and it was in the experimental features of the snapshot for Bundles of Bravery. And then that was later released on December 3rd. So early December 2024 is when the winter drop, the Garden Awakens, came out. So looking at Minecraft Live 2025, which is on this Saturday, September 27th, this year, we have snapshots going into the pre-release stage before Minecraft Live. So I am anticipating, as we mentioned earlier, Tuesday, September 30th is probably a good bet for the release of the Copper Age drop, because there's not going to be a need for snapshots happening immediately thereafter like they had with Bundles of Bravery, because we've now been a full year into this more frequent drop cycle, as opposed to the previous snapshot cycle that we were in. One thing that's going to be nice about this, I think, is that when they do decide to start releasing snapshots for whatever a potential winter drop might be, over the last year, we've been roughly 2 weeks. So something like Chase the Skies come out, we get a couple of weeks of enjoying that, and then we start to see snapshots for whatever the next thing is going to be. In this case, it was the Copper Age. We don't get a name right away, but we do start to see new snapshots. I anticipate probably about that kind of a wait. Like if we've got a September 30th potential release for the Copper Age, somewhere around October 14th, we should start to see snapshots for whatever the potential winter drop might be. The nice thing about this is that there's not going to be a confusion as to which is coming out when. So rather than having the winter drop be experimental features in the Copper Age, I would imagine they'll just leave the Copper Age as it is. It'll come out as a drop, and then we'll see snapshots for the next drop. And I like that better as a potential, release schedule. And then as far as anticipating a winter drop, I agree with you. I think it's probably going to be early December, somewheres before the holiday season comes out, when kids are out of school and there's a chance to sit down and play a little bit of Minecraft on holiday. I would anticipate it be somewheres in there. They don't have to have the entire month of October be snapshot for a previous release, so they have more time to have, not a lot more time, probably a couple more weeks to have additional snapshots for the winter drop. So it might come out late November, but I would imagine they'll want to give it as much time in the hopper, if you'll pardon the reference, as they can before it comes out. So and that to me would be somewhere between December 2nd and December 16th. Those are the first 2 or 3 Tuesdays in December, but I would lean somewhere around the 2nd.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, that schedule, and you want to make sure that you have enough time that the team can be in the studio for hot fixes and things like that, just in case there are any crashes or whatever with the main release. And we can assume, judging by the current sort of setup of things, that this is going to be 1.21.10 as long as there's no issues with the Copper Age drop and they don't need sort of a small hotfix coming in then. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be, for the first time in a while, like I'm trying to think back through previous Minecraft versions and thinking when they've got to a .10 release of any of the previous major updates. But then I don't even feel like this is necessarily part of the, what would this be, the Tricky Trials update 1.21? Like, I don't think Happy Ghasts and the Copper Golem and everything really feel like they are part of Tricky Trials anymore. So it feels a little bit different to consider 1.21.10 as whatever else they have coming up, whatever they have planned.
Do you think that that's an opportunity to move to 1.22?
I don't know. That's the thing. Like, I think, looking at the long term here, like I still think that the topic that dominates player discussion is long-term updates, is major version revisions, it's that kind of thing. And so often I think the conversation then turns to what constitutes a major update, which at this point, given that they've given us some pretty substantial features, like you look at the Garden Awakens gave us an entire biome, a brand new mob, like, stuff like that. Like Happy Ghasts gave us, a whole new way to explore and transport mobs. Spring to Life gave us a bunch of animal variants, updates to existing biomes, more floral and like that kind of range of features. I think major updates now feel like they have to be holistic, thematic, consistent, And obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is the stuff everyone's been raving about for a while, updates to the end, a dimension beyond the Ancient City portal, or at least some sort of functionality for it, if not a fresh new dimension. And I have to say, it seems unlikely that Mojang are going to commit to only a couple of months worth of player testing for a major expansion to the game, especially when that's going to have to come out before the winter break, and this feels like the shortest period of time that they would have to playtest something, even if it's been development for a while, because as we know at this point, they can be developing features for a long time before players actually get to see them, test them, and they get into, a state to be fully released. So we don't know necessarily if they have or haven't been working on something big behind the scenes, but it still feels like this would be a fairly short testing window if they were going to release a major version update by December. I could theoretically see them adopting the gameplay drop philosophy with an update that rolls out in stages. Obviously, we got Caves and Cliffs in Part 1 and Part 2, but that was under different circumstances. Events outside of their control ultimately led to that happening. Whereas if they were upfront about it and said, we're doing an end update, this is going to be end update Part 1. And that changes something significant about biomes in the Outer Islands. One of those starts to pop up, but they say, hold on, Part 2 is coming, that's going to add more mobs, or it's going to add more technical stuff, or ores are going to start to show up, or something like that. That's just going to be a little further down the line. I can see that working, and us getting effectively a major update through revisions that took place over the course of several of these gameplay drops. That could be one way of doing it. But I suppose the downside to that is an update wouldn't feel necessarily complete if we knew it was only Part 1. And that not only leads to a bit of player dissatisfaction, or even players saying, well, why am I waiting around for Part 1 of this? Why not just sit on this until this is done and give us something small to play with in the meantime? It also encourages some of the excessive hype and speculation that we've seen in the past that they are trying to avoid by announcing fully fledged features when they have them available for these gameplay drops. So yeah, I think it's difficult to know if we're talking about major version numbers. I think one thing a lot of people would like to see is just continued reassurance that major updates are not completely a thing of the past, and that these small gameplay drops are the only thing that will be given to Minecraft in future. But I find that those arguments always center around the version numbering scheme and not the content of the updates themselves, which is something I always try and steer away from, because I don't care what you call it. Is the game fun? Are the updates good? And that's the stuff that I'm much more curious about from this year's Minecraft Live.
Yeah, I'll use No Man's Sky as an example because I couldn't tell you the numbered version of it. Somebody that's talking about patches or letting people know what they need to download in order to get over a bug or something like that. Like, yeah, you're going to need to know that it's like 6.2 or whatever they're calling it right now. But I go off of, the Voyagers update, which is what the latest update of No Man's Sky is, right? Like, yeah. They've given them names. They do a big release. They do some marketing. There's a trailer. Like, they have all they do all the same kind of things that Minecraft does. But they really don't focus at all on the version number outside of maybe the patch notes. And so I'm with you. Like, I don't necessarily need it to be a 22 release or a 23 release for big sweeping updates. I think that simply the name of it and the, I guess, communicated changes is what's going to differentiate between a major update and a minor update. I would even say that between the several drops we've had recently, that the Garden Awakens update feels bigger than Spring to Life, Chase the Skies, and the Copper Age. Okay, Chase the Skies was, I would say, there's a big change in it in terms of the happy gas, but overall, probably one of the smaller updates, compared to the other two. I guess it depends on player perspective. It depends on player interest. Like, if you're not interested in inventory sorting, then the Copper Age is maybe of no great consequence to you, right? So I feel like I have a delicate balance there to work out. But with the potential of an end update, which I know everybody's thinking about, I'm curious and or anticipating the confusion of them using the experimental features section of the snapshots to say, hey, we've got an update, an end update is in the works for like 2026. You're going to start to see some of the features in the experimental features of the snapshots, but the snapshots are going to be for whatever drop is coming in December or March or June, whatever the last year of dates has been roughly for us to kind of go off of. And I hope that they don't do it that way. I like your idea of like, here's a roadmap. The end update, again, using it as an example, is big. It's going to be 3 updates. Here's what we're planning. Know that these are coming soon. Know that these are coming later. And then the challenge there is to release it in a way that's appealing every single time you update, so that players are incentivized to actually engage with part 1 and not just wait for part 3 to come out and get everything all at once. A recent example of this is World of Warcraft. I haven't been keeping up on the details, but it is something that they announced a year or 2 ago at BlizzCon, is that they laid out the next kind of like 3 years of World of Warcraft. Say, this is our plan, this is our story roadmap, to try and incentivize players to come in and stick around for each phase of that. And now the details of what's coming in part 2 and part 3, players don't know, but part 1, they've had like player housing and some long anticipated stuff come out. So Minecraft could potentially take that road. I'm not saying it's an easy road, but I think it would be less confusing than having to, I mean, this is maybe a little bit selfish, for us every week to explain that no, the features that are in experimental right now in the snapshot are nowhere near coming out. And that's the other thing, is that experimental stuff doesn't necessarily come out at all. And so if you use that to run potential end updates, like, you might get players' hopes up and then have to axe it because it doesn't work, or some of the players don't like it, or you get a lot of feedback. Like, I'd rather a more assertive line from Mojang going forward and saying like, look, this is the roadmap, this is what we're doing. Yes, it's going to take some time, but if you trust us and keep up, then it'll be worth it in the end.
I mean, I think that's also the problem with the roadmap, is that they have to be clear about what's actually locked into the game and what isn't, and they have to stay committed to that. Like, that's the whole problem with Fireflies being missing from the Wild update, was they said we're going to introduce Fireflies and then ultimately walked that back in favor of other features. And players don't like when that stuff happens because they get very attached to stuff before it's ever in the game. So I think it's very difficult to create a roadmap for even a year's worth of Minecraft development, tell players this is what we have in mind, and still fully commit to that when the organic nature of developing this game means that sometimes you have to pull back on those ideas and scale back some of the stuff you initially expected. Which is why, frankly, I'm expecting this to be still a relatively small gameplay drop, and for whatever they announce at this Minecraft Live to be something closer to the trend they've already set with the mob vote contenders. We have the Copper Golem coming to the game at long last after being a very popular contender for the 2021 mob vote. It has actually been that long since Copper Golems were initially suggested as an addition to the game. The Allay ultimately won that vote. The one that is still yet to show in any kind of experimental form in snapshots or anything is the Glare, and I think that's a reasonable contender for something that would work in modern Minecraft. I think the Glare's functionality could actually stay more or less the same as pitched. It could be a way to breathe new life into environments like Lush Caves, perhaps, if they spawned there naturally, considering that Lush Caves are now as old as the Caves and Cliffs update, which is several years ago at this point. And I think there's a couple of those mob vote contenders, especially after last week's email. Like, when we did our chunk mail dispenser last week, we had 4 individual ideas, all of which were tied to older mob vote contenders, or the Vulture, I think, was part of the biome vote, but was still a new mob that was pitched as part of those changes. And I think those sort of convinced me that there's still a lot of life in the old mob vote ideas. The Copper Golem, for its part, has also done that, because the Copper Golem's functionality is significantly different from what it was pitched as, and I think a lot more people are excited about that than would be excited about the Copper Golem just pushing certain types of buttons. So I think the Glare is a possibility. I think the Rascal is a possibility. I think the Rascal would probably need a few tweaks from the original pitch to stay interesting for long-term players, but I think it's a more original idea, and I think that's one of the things that I'm really clinging to this time, is that they've had a lot of really great Minecraft-feeling ideas, stuff that fits the world and is often original to the world, or at least different enough from iterations of it that you might see in other media that it really sets apart what's different about Minecraft and what makes Minecraft special. The tough golem could be another option from previous mob vote contenders, but I think introducing the tough golem right after the copper golem seems like a bit of a misstep in terms of what you could do to expand the game in a more diverse way. The functionality that they suggested for the tough golem was fairly similar in terms of interacting with dropped items and stuff like that, right? So I can't imagine that players would be super jazzed about getting something that interacts with items in your base right after the copper golem introduced that very same thing. So I'm kind of curious if the glare or the rascal see the light of day this time around, or if they have other ideas percolating that might be worth sharing this time.
Yeah, I don't know about the tough golem. I like you. I think they need to really take it in a different direction than what the copper golem is now already doing for players. So I'd be curious to see what would happen there. And all the things we talked about last week, in terms of the mob ideas, I think are in that realm. Like, it definitely lends itself in. And like you, looking at recent additions like the copper golem, I think we might see something like quality of life or player inventory related changes. If you look at the last year, we've seen bundles and the copper golem. We've seen the happy ghast, locator bar, and changes to the lead and saddle crafting recipes. So not like big, changes overall. Not everything was a huge shift, but there's been a decent amount of just quality of life, specifically in the UI, for players. And so I'm hoping for something that complements the game as a whole, not just something that really leans on early game. And I don't know what that is. Like, I feel like Mojang has been presenting, rather than one sweeping change to address, like, the quote unquote inventory problem that we mentioned on the show from time to time. There's been these very different, very unique, we'll say Minecrafty ways of dealing with that. And so I'm curious to see if there's going to be more of that. That might involve something like the glare and the rascal. That could be interesting. Not necessarily for inventory, because I feel like the copper golem is working on that, but for something else, quality of life, whether that's quality of life exploring, quality of life survival, like whatever could be applied to those different mobs might be something to look forward to. Personally, I'm really hoping we get some information about vibrant visuals on Java. That's something that I'm really curious about, and not that my plans really hinge on it, but I'm definitely curious to see what that looks like, what that performs like. I'm hoping to see the feedback from players on Vibrant Visuals and Bedrock be implemented on both platforms, because, in my opinion, I think it's oversaturated in some areas. I think a lot of people have the same opinion, that it's in some ways it looks good, but in other ways it's really not the most attractive, because I don't see a lot of people out there using it. Now granted, I don't watch a lot of Bedrock stuff, but I've not seen a lot of people saying like, yeah, Vibrant Visuals has changed my life. I'm 100% like in here. Like, some people are saying, well, I'm using it, but like, it's not always the best. There have been some rendering changes under the hood in Java Edition over the last few snapshots that we've seen that seem to be paving the road for Vibrant Visuals. Things like the end flashes, how it lights up the world, rendering of entities and how they function has been changed. So I think a lot of that might be taking care of some of the technical under the hood stuff. So I'm hoping we'll get at least a little bit of information about Vibrant Visuals coming to Java Edition. I don't know, like maybe the next drop for Java might just focus on Vibrant Visuals. I don't know what they would do in addition to that, like what other kind of blocks or things they might add, because I think that ultimately, going into the end of the year, it would be nice to have some additional blocks come in. Like, we've had some plants and foliage and things come in this year, and we've had a few extra blocks, but nothing really as sweeping as having pale oak added last year. So I'd be curious. I'm not saying there's going to be a new wood block, but it would be nice to have something else come in to play, or a new family of blocks or something in that realm. Thinking about new biomes and stuff, again, trying to move away from the end. They've also focused a lot on the overworld, and I see, if they were to add a new biome, I could maybe see them update the Nether with another spooky biome or fungus biome or something colorful or something else to kind of get in there. Not that I think that players are necessarily bored with the Nether, but if they wanted to add that kind of experience, I could see them maybe doing it in the Nether as opposed to the overworld because of just focusing so much on the overworld in the last year.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think the previous biomes that they have suggested updating for the overworld, the things that remain from the 2 years we got biome votes at Minecraft Live, I don't think either of them are particularly strong contenders. I think the desert biome is out of the running entirely because we now have cactus flowers, which were one of the features that were mentioned at those. We have dry grass now, which is a new addition. We have camels spawning naturally outside of villages. We have ambient sounds for large areas of sand and dead bushes. So it feels like deserts quietly got an overhaul during Spring to Life. And I feel like there's some of that stuff happening in Badlands as well. Badlands and Savannah both ended up getting armadillos, which, while not a complete overhaul, is at least something. And I think either of those biomes are places that, in the Badlands case, you sort of go to get resources, and you don't necessarily stick around and build a whole lot there. And people don't tend to build in savannas all that much anyway, but for people who like the biome, you're going there for acacia wood probably anyway, because it's the only place you can get hold of it. So there are still reasons to visit those biomes, albeit temporarily. And I don't think players were that excited about things like termites, tumbleweeds, ostriches, stuff like that. So I don't think either of those necessarily fit the bill in terms of a really, really popular idea that can be brought back a la the Copper Golem and, used for future biome updates. I think the fact that they came out of nowhere with the Creaking and the Pale Garden last time was a really, really strong way to finish up the year. And some highly desirable blocks for builders, a very original mob. It felt like something that naturally fit the game that we were already playing, even though some people weren't super happy with the fact that it was taking over bits of Dark Oak Forest, and the spawning of Pale Gardens is still kind of odd here and there. I think there's a lot to these original ideas that sort of seem to come out of left field, which are obviously much harder to predict, but I do think it's worth highlighting the originality that Minecraft already has. And through biomes like the stuff that we have in the Nether already, those all came out of nowhere for the Nether update, but it was so cool seeing the transformation happen from Nether wastes everywhere to, fungus popping up all over the place, basalt deltas. Everything felt suddenly fresh and new about that dimension, and there is still so much room for other biomes to fit in there. The overworld has something like 50 biomes, the Nether has 5. So kind of nice to have a bit of expansion there, although obviously the end does remain a completely blank canvas. You look at this year's drops, we've had featured variants of existing animals along with an expansion to foliage. We've had the Happy Ghast, we now have the Copper Golem. These all build on concepts which we were already kind of familiar with. Like the Happy Ghast is effectively a variant of the Ghast, even though it allows us to do a lot more stuff. Copper Golems we already knew about for several years as being an idea from an old biome vote, and they feel sort of like a distant cousin to the Iron Golem. And then all of the different cows and sheep, chicken variants and so forth, plus foliage, some of which was based on ideas we already had, from pink petals to wildflowers and then leaf litter. I think it's interesting to imagine something that comes out of nowhere, even as a small idea, and gives us a facet of Minecraft that we just don't have. The difficulty, of course, is once you're looking at a world that's this expansive and this feature-rich, you kind of go, what's missing? And it's harder and harder to answer that question with each subsequent update. But I think they're still managing to surprise us with ideas like the Creaking and introducing a white wood set. There is a pretty decent pattern now of roughly once per year, we get a new type of wood. We've had it with mangrove, we've had it with cherry, we've had it with pale oak. Bamboo kind of came in as a side thing as well. I'm wondering if we get another update to the wood palette. We end up with a green wood type or something like that players have been asking for a while. Or at long last, something in the royal blue color family. That's the hope, at least, the distant hope. But yeah, I think it's interesting to imagine that the developers are probably sitting on a lot of these ideas, but the most difficult thing when they are completely original is trying to pitch for them to feel like they've been a part of Minecraft all along and we're only just discovering them. And that's the feeling I think they want to evoke from a lot of these updates, which is why we get things that are variations on a theme of what we already have.
If we're talking about wood colors, specifically royal blue or purple, my money would be on an end update as to where those would make the most sense to come from. Green, you could probably do something in the overworld. Like I feel like, or I guess the Nether too, depending on how you wanted to roll. Green might be a little bit too close to warped in terms of something like that. And also, like, how do you introduce something like that in the Nether without making it look or feel just like a different version of a warped or crimson biome? Like more hi-fi. Like I don't know if players would be all that excited about just like a green hi-fi. I think there'd have to be a little bit more going on. So I could see something like that being in the overworld. But who's to say, like, these drops, like, they don't necessarily have to be super themed. Like there was not a lot of connection, in the spring to life stuff. They just kind of sprinkled things in different biomes. Like I guess overall it was more of a naturalistic update, but like you could have, a new tree or something added in the overworld and the addition of a new mob in the Nether. Like they don't all have to be kind of like thematic with these drops. They could be a little bit more separated, I guess, in their updates. But then again, it might be easier to market if it's all in one chunk. So we'll have to see. Like I'm curious to see what they're going to talk about. And one of the things that, again, leaning on your biome assessment of things like the savanna and the Badlands. I don't remember seeing a Badlands or being in a Badlands when I was adventuring around in Vibrant Visuals, but I do remember being in a savanna, and it was not great. The yellow tint was unattractive. So there's even less incentive now with Vibrant Visuals for players to build in savannas. So we'll have to see if any of the updates there happen with Vibrant Visuals to see if those biome tints are any different. Something that I'm anticipating is dealing with a very, very purple biome tint in the mushroom fields.
Yeah, that's something you've got to consider, I think, given your more recent location. But yeah, we'll cross our fingers for some exciting stuff happening this Minecraft Live. It would be great to end the year with something that feels like a Christmas present, but we're looking forward to it as much as you are at home, I'm sure. We are going to be broadcasting Minecraft Live. We're going to be co-streaming it from each of our respective Twitch channels. So twitch.tv/pixelriffs for me, twitch.tv/Joel Duggan for Joel. We're just going to be co-streaming it as we did the tour of West Hill, because it seems like we've got that fairly locked down now. So hopefully you folks will be able to join us for that. Otherwise, looking forward to sharing all of the news from Minecraft Live on the next episode of the Spawn Chunks. For now, that's where we're going to wrap up today's show, though. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff that we've talked about today at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show is composed by me, and the Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you're getting some value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? You can do that at patreon.com/the Spawn Chunks, where pledging at any of our paid tiers gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord. You can listen to the show live and watch the show live when we record it every Monday. We are also sharing the full render distance, the full video feed of our entire conversation with our patrons now as well. We've also got stuff like our monthly hangouts where you can share what you've been up to in Minecraft. That's also going to be right ahead of Minecraft Live on the weekend, so patrons tune in for that, and I'm sure we can start building hype for Minecraft Live while we're there. We currently have 276 patrons. It's up 2 from last week. Thank you to the 2 of you for jumping on board, but there is always room for more. Special thanks go out to our content engineers, Hunter555, Jumbo Sale, Mindtrip Media, and That Penguin Dude. Thank you for your support on this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell a friend about the Spawn Chunks and where they can go to listen to it. You can find us at the Spawn Chunks on all of your favorite social media, including our TikTok account where we share clips of the show. New episodes are published on Mondays that go out on your favorite podcasting platform. Video versions are available on YouTube and on Spotify. And as Pixelverse mentioned, there is the video version of the render distance on the Patreon page. And also we have annual memberships available. So if you're someone that's been around for a while and planning on sticking around even longer, then you can look into getting an annual membership over at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. Email the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. The RSS feed is available on our website, thespawnchunks.com, and the RSS feed on the Patreon page is where you get the render distance, the extended version of the podcast, right to your favorite podcasting app.
My name is Johnny, but online I go by Pixelriffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/pixelriffs, where the Minecraft Survival Guide is currently in its 3rd season. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch when I can. I do behind-the-scenes work for my YouTube series there. I'm also the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, soon to be taking a break before Season 10 transitions into Season 11, but we are still here. That's through a quick YouTube search. Just search for Hermitcraft recap. Aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on both Blue Sky and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
I'm going to point you towards the Citadel Cafe, which is my other podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. We should be recording a new episode this week sometime in my Discord, so if you're around for that live. If not, you can always check it out on your favorite podcasting app. I'm Joel Duggan on social media and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I stream Tuesday through Saturday. Currently working on the Soundwave Lego set on Fridays, alternating between Minecraft and Satisfactory during the week. And obviously we'll be not having a Saturday stream because I'll be live with Pixel Riffs covering the show. So my typical stream will be replaced by covering Minecraft live this particular week. I will also point you towards Joel Duggan VODs on YouTube. That is where all of the VODs from everything that I do in Minecraft go to live. I don't really play Minecraft if I'm not live. And that means that the tour that I did of West Hill with Pixel Riffs about a week ago is now live on the YouTube channel. Our patrons here on the Spawn Chunks and my personal patrons got early access to that. That is now public. So if you are one of our broader listeners, you can go to Joel Duggan VODs on YouTube and watch the tour of West Hill.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, or at least we predict it is.